This is the first entry in a series of videos that'll be discussing the 6th book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, The Winds of Winter. Just like the 𝐈𝐝 video on this channel, we're going to focus on one subject at a time. This video, for example, is about identity. Identity plays a major part in these books. There are many characters who hide their identity, or aren't aware of their true identity. Some assume new identities. Some even pretend to be someone they're not. To begin this video, let's talk about the most popular theory about identity. Who are Jon Snow's parents? In A Game of Thrones, we're told that Jon Snow is a bastard. His father being Eddard Stark, and his mother a common woman. Various identities are mentioned as being Jon's mother, but Eddard Stark himself identifies her as a woman named 𝐈𝐝𝐿𝐼. Later in A Storm of Swords, Edric Dayne informs Arya that he and Jon Snow are milk brothers, meaning they share the same wet nurse. This at the very least proves that 𝐈𝐿𝐼 is an actual person and not made up. Though curiously, we never hear where 𝐈𝐿𝐼 is. It's not even known if she's alive or dead. And after A Storm of Swords, we never get another reference to her. It could be that she'll make an appearance in The Winds of Winter, maybe to deny that she is Jon Snow's mother, or to uphold the lie. Or George just forgot she existed. We've made it far enough to admit that most likely everybody watching this is already fully aware of the truth behind Jon Snow's parentage. As the show confirmed in Season 7, Jon is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. R plus L equals J. But no theory can be 100% confirmed until the books are out. So let's discuss the evidence we have for R plus L equals J being true. And then after that, we can dive into some more alternative theories for Jon Snow's parentage.
Save me, Jon Snow.
The R plus L equals J theory begins at the tourney at Harrenhal. It's there that Rhaegar wins a jousting match against Barristan Selmy. And in a shocking act of disrespect for his wife Elia Martell, and also an act of utter political foolishness, he gives a laurel of blue winter roses to Lyanna Stark, a woman who was not only not his wife, but was also betrothed to one Robert Baratheon. Things only got worse from there. As the story goes, that next year, Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna Stark and whisked her away, a decision which led to war. Brandon and Rickard Stark would both die in King's Landing after demanding that Lyanna be returned to them. King Aerys also demands the death of Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon, but they, along with Jon Arryn, rise up in revolt, in what comes to be known as Robert's Rebellion. The whole time during this war, Lyanna is nowhere to be seen. It's not until Rhaegar and Aerys are dead does Eddard finally find Lyanna Stark at the Tower of Joy. After a bloody fight with 3 members of the Kingsguard, in which only Ned and Howland survive of their original party of 7, Ned finds Lyanna inside the tower, dying. The text strongly implies this is because of complications from pregnancy. Right before her death, Lyanna begs Ned to promise her something. That promise is a mystery to us, at least in the books. In the show, we know that she's begging him to protect her son. When Ned returns to Winterfell after the war, he has a baby boy with him, a bastard named Jon Snow. There is little doubt that Jon has Stark blood in him. He's said to have a very Stark-like face. And more specifically, he's said to look like Arya, who herself is said to look very much like Lyanna. The timeline and looks point to Lyanna and Rhaegar. There's also heavy symbolism with Lyanna and blue roses. Lyanna receives blue roses from Rhaegar at Harrenhal, and in A Game of Thrones, Ned Stark has 2 separate dreams about them. One is about Lyanna in the crypts with a garland of blue roses, and the second dream is of a storm of rose petals blowing across a blood-streaked sky, as Lyanna calls Ned's name. With this connection between Lyanna and blue roses established, now recall that during Dany's time at the House of the Undying, she has a vision of blue roses growing in a wall of ice, which is almost certainly, as certain as we can be without the Winds of Winter, referring to Jon Snow, to Lyanna's son at the wall. Having another Targaryen in the world will complicate matters greatly, especially one that has a claim to the throne, if you believe that Rhaegar annulled his marriage to Elia before marrying Lyanna, that is. Now that was part of the show, but it never quite worked. Why would a bunch of lords and ladies ever believe that some guy is actually the secret son of a long-dead prince? Well, the show never really figured that out. It's quite a conundrum, but maybe Jon will, just like the show, not be terribly interested in the throne.
I don't want it.
If it's not R plus L equals J, some fans have put forward N plus A equals J. This refers to Ned Stark plus Ashara Dayne equals Jon Snow. We hear whispers that Ashara Dayne and Ned Stark fell in love during the tourney at Harrenhal. Characters in the books do mention Ashara as a possible candidate for Jon's mother. Catelyn even confronted Ned one point about Ashara, but he wouldn't confirm or deny anything. Cersei also brings it up during a conversation with Ned. In A Storm of Swords, Edric Dayne tells Arya about how, according to his aunt, Ned fell in love with Ashara at Harrenhal. There does seem to have been love between them, but unless Ned met with Ashara in a previously undisclosed encounter, the timeline doesn't quite work out for Jon's birth. Though J.R.R. Martin has said she was able to travel during the war, saying, quote, Ashara Dayne was not nailed to the floor in Starfall, as some of the fans who write me seem to assume. So it's not impossible. But Rhaegar and Lyanna is a far more interesting theory and has far more foreshadowing backing it up. Before we move on to the next theory, let us discuss Jon Snow's real name. By this, we mean whatever name Rhaegar or Lyanna gave him, because we know that Ned named him Jon after his father figure, Jon Arryn. In the show, Jon's real name is Aegon Targaryen. Now that would make sense if not for the fact that in the books we already have one Aegon Targaryen running around, and while most fans doubt the veracity of his claim to the throne, it still doesn't change the fact that having two Aegons running around would unnecessarily complicate an already complicated story. So it's probably not Aegon. Another option is Aemon. Aemon the Dragon Knight was one of Jon Snow's favorite tales. We hear that when Jon and Robb would train, they would often pretend to be heroes and knights. They were not little boys when they fought, but knights and mighty heroes. I'm Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, Jon would call out. And Robb would shout back, well, I'm Florian the Fool. In another Jon chapter, we read this. But he had not left the wall for that. He had left because he was after all his father's son, and Robb's brother. The gift of a sword, even a sword as fine as Longclaw, did not make him a Mormont, nor was he Aemon Targaryen. While that quote is referring to Maester Aemon, it might also be that J.R.R. Martin is making a joke here. It would certainly be in line with the sort of irony that he enjoys. In A Dance with Dragons, we are introduced to an out-of-left-field contender for the Iron Throne, a young man claiming to be Aegon Targaryen. Aegon was thought to be dead, killed by the Mountain during the sack of King's Landing. But this Aegon claims that a peasant boy was killed in his place, and he was spirited away to Essos. But this so-called Aegon story seems too convenient, too triumphant. The story of the exiled prince coming home to restore order, peace, and justice to the kingdom, to save it from the evil usurpers who have taken the throne and rule over commoners with an iron fist. Okay, well, the people who rule King's Landing are pretty evil, but that doesn't mean Aegon is who he says he is. In the later books, and throughout the Dunk and Egg novellas, we hear tales of the Blackfires, a branch of House Targaryen founded by a legitimized Targaryen bastard named Daemon. Several bloody rebellions later, the house, or at least its male line, is extinguished, when Maelys I is cut down in the War of the Nine Penny Kings. But the male line being gone doesn't mean the Blackfires have disappeared from the world. And the fact that we hear about them time and time again in the later books is unlikely to be a coincidence. In fact, the published versions have less references to the Blackfires in the drafts, which seems to suggest that J.R.R. Martin felt it was too obvious and had to make it a bit more subtle. Because of this, many have theorized that this so-called Aegon Targaryen is actually Aegon Blackfire. Aegon has the look of a Targaryen. He has the purple eyes, and presumably the silver hair. He does keep his hair dyed blue, so we can't know his original hair color. But why would he hide it unless it was the signature Targaryen silver? So at the very least, there does seem to be some Targaryen blood running through him. Aegon tells Tyrion Lannister that the imposter infant who died in his place was a tanner's son born at Pisswater Bend, and the real Aegon was smuggled across the Narrow Sea, where he was given first to Illyrio Mopatis and then later Jon Connington. Just like many readers though, Tyrion is skeptical. So many fans feel that Aegon is a Blackfire. But is there any actual evidence behind these claims? Or is Aegon really who he says he is? Let's first examine it from the angle of Aegon genuinely being a Targaryen. It does seem unlikely, but there is some evidence. During the sack of King's Landing, when the two corpses of Rhaegar's children are unwrapped from a cloak, Princess Rhaenys is confirmed dead, but the boy is unrecognizable. Kevin Lannister says the boy was a faceless horror of bone and brain and gore. A few hanks of fair hair. None of us looked long. Tywin said that it was Prince Aegon, and we took him at his word. Further evidence is added to this by G.R.R. Martin's response to this fan question. I was wondering if you could answer, or take the fifth. One teeny little question I've been dying to ask for the past year. Are Aegon and Rhaenys, Ellia's children, well and truly dead? To this, G.R.R. Martin would respond, all I have to say is that there's absolutely no doubt that little Princess Rhaenys was dragged from beneath her father's bed and slain. Lastly, during Varys' conversation with Kevin Lannister before he kills him, Varys discusses Aegon with him and presents him as the legitimate heir. Doubt, division, and mistrust will eat the very ground beneath your boy king, whilst Aegon raises his banner above Storm's End and the lords of the realm gather round him. Aegon? For a moment he did not understand. Then he remembered. A babe swaddled in a crimson cloak, the cloth stained with his blood and brains. Dead. He's dead. No. The eunuch's voice seemed deeper. He is here. Aegon has been shaped for rule since before he could walk. He has been trained in arms, as befits a knight to be. But that was not the end of his education. He reads and writes. He speaks several tongues. He has studied history and law. A septa has instructed him in the mysteries of the faith since he was old enough to understand them. He has lived with fisherfolk, worked with his hands, swum in rivers and mended nets, and learned to wash his own clothes at need. He can fish and cook, bind up a wound. He knows what it is like to be hungry, to be hunted, to be afraid. Tommen has been taught that kingship is his right. Aegon knows that kingship is his duty, that a king must put his people first, and live and rule for them. It's odd that Varys would say all this to a man he kills only moments later. You would think that if Aegon is fake, Varys would just tell the truth. Though it should be said that Varys never technically calls him a Targaryen. He only refers to him by his first name, which may be an out by George to not confirm or deny his identity. Also, there's the sort of flawed logic of the baby swap. Would Lannister soldiers really not have noticed? The Mountain is a brutal beast to be sure, so maybe he didn't care, but you would think that at least one soldier would have noticed the distinct lack of purple eyes with baby Aegon. And there's the question of if Elia Martell would have ever let her son be taken by Varys the Spider. Maybe, maybe not. Needless to say, there's a chance that Aegon is genuinely legitimate. Now for evidence for Aegon being a Blackfire. In A Clash of Kings, during Daenerys' visit to the House of the Undying, she has a vision of a mummer's dragon. A cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. And later, the ever-mysterious Quaithe also warns Dany about a mummer's dragon. If Aegon is a Blackfire, he would fit quite well. You can imagine Aegon taking King's Landing, with the population supporting this happily. Cersei is not a popular ruler after all, and then he indeed would be a mummer's dragon amidst a cheering crowd. In A Dance with Dragons, we learn that the Golden Company has broken a contract. For most sellswords, the breaking of a contract may not be a massive deal, but for the Golden Company, it is. Because up until this point, in its nearly 80 years of mercenary work, the Golden Company has never broken a contract. For those unaware, the Golden Company was founded by Aegor Rivers, also known as Bittersteel. Bittersteel was a supporter of Daemon Blackfire, and when Daemon died, Bittersteel fled across the Narrow Sea, eventually forming a sellsword group of Westerosi exiles called the Golden Company. Bittersteel never forgot the dream of returning home. His last order before his death was for his men to take his skull, dip it in gold, and take it back to Westeros with them. For the Golden Company, returning to Westeros is massive, and it would follow that the only reason they would ever break a contract is for a real chance to return home. And what better way to do this than with one of the Blackfires, a cause that Bittersteel so strongly supported. If Aegon is to pretend he's a real Targaryen, one way that he could prove to the masses that he is who he says he is by having the Targaryen sword Blackfire. Blackfire is a Valyrian steel sword, once wielded by Aegon the Conqueror himself. Aegon the Unworthy, the fourth Aegon, gave it to Daemon, who then named himself Daemon Blackfire. Bittersteel retrieved the sword from Daemon's corpse, and that's the last we hear of it. So it's likely that the Golden Company still has it. What better way to convince Westeros you're a true-born Targaryen than to wage war against the usurpers with Aegon the Conqueror's sword? Throughout the later books, there are increasing references to the Blackfires, especially in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. In particular, in A Feast for Crows, during a conversation that Brienne has with Septon Maribald, there's a passage that many fans believe is a reference to Aegon. When the smith's son was an old man, a bastard son of the fourth Aegon rose up in rebellion against his true-born brother, and took for his sigil a black dragon. These lands belonged to Lord Derry then, and his lordship was fiercely loyal to the king. The sight of the black iron dragon made him wroth, so he cut down the post, hacked the sign into pieces, and cast them into the river. One of the dragon's heads washed up on the Quiet Isle many years later, though by that time it was red with rust. A black dragon, the symbol of House Targaryen, being eventually revealed as a red one, the symbol of the Blackfires, sure sounds like Aegon being eventually exposed to be a fake. It should also be said, although it's not technically canon as it was never published, that drafts of Tyrion's A Dance with Dragon chapters contained more references to the Blackfires than the published version. This included an entire history lesson about the last Blackfire rebellion, known as the War of the Nine Penny Kings. It seems a bit on the nose that readers would receive a large history lesson about a branch of Targaryens right before he meets Aegon, probably why it was cut from the book. Assuming that Aegon is a Blackfire then, who are his parents?
Well, one theory is that Aegon is the child of Illyrio and his second wife, Sarah.
Sarah did have Valyrian characteristics. Her hair was described as golden streaked with silver, certainly a Targaryen hair color. Her eyes, however, were blue, but we've also been told that some Targaryens have blue eyes. Velour Targaryen, for example, is described as having cool blue eyes. So it seems that Sarah could have Valyrian blood. Now the timeline of this relationship is vague. Rhaegar's son was born sometime in 281 or 282 AC, meaning that young Griff would also have had to have been born around the same time. If his age didn't add up, Jon Con would have likely noticed by now. So that means Illyrio met and later had a son with Sarah around 281 to 282 AC. Assuming that Illyrio is young Griff's father, that is. This would mean that Illyrio was cheating on his first wife with Sarah, as the text seems to imply that Illyrio married his first wife around the time Varys went to serve King Aerys sometime after 278. We know that Sarah is dead, killed by an outbreak of grayscale, though it's unknown what year she died. But because of this tragic death, some have proposed that there is a parallel to the Promise Me Ned scene between Lyanna and Eddard Stark. Here, Sarah made Illyrio promise to give her son the Iron Throne before she passed. Illyrio does seem to still love Sarah. He keeps her portrait and claims to have her stone hands in his possession. And during Tyrion's time at Illyrio's manse, he's given clothes meant for a young boy. Some think these clothes were once Aegon's.
This theory would help to explain why Varys and Illyrio are assisting a supposed Targaryen in retaking the Iron Throne. The more materialistic reasons like money don't really make any sense. Illyrio is already obscenely wealthy. In fact, this is something brought up by Tyrion in A Dance with Dragons, saying quite succinctly, why would a Magister of Pentos give 3 figs about who wears the crown in Westeros? Regardless of Aegon's identity, whether he's actually Targaryen, a Blackfire, or simply has some Valyrian blood, things are sure to go wrong in the Winds of Winter, and Westeros will likely be plunged into a second Dance of the Dragons. In A Feast for Crows, we learn of a novice at the Citadel named Alleras. He's been studying at the Citadel for about a year, and has already forged 3 links in his macer's chain. And many fans believe that Alleras is actually Sarella Sand, one of Oberyn Martell's bastard daughters, and there's a lot of compelling evidence to prove this theory is true. Alleras claims to be Dornish on his father's side and Summer Islander on his mother's, and Sarella, curiously enough, is also Dornish on her father's side and Summer Islander on her mother's. Physically, Alleras' description sounds quite similar to Oberyn Martell. They both have black hair, black eyes, and a widow's peak. We also learn in A Feast for Crows that Sarella Sand loves Old Town, and she's apparently an incredibly curious person, as we see in Arya 1 with this line. Sarella turned over rocks, brushed sand off the mosaics, and wanted to know everything there was to know about the people who had lived here. The Citadel seems like a perfect place for a curious person who not only wishes to learn about the world, but is also a fan of Old Town. And as we read in A Feast for Crows, when Doran Martell has the Sand Snakes arrested, Sarella is not in Dorne at the present, and is seemingly engaged in some sort of game. Many think that this game is Sarella pretending to be a man, as women are not allowed to become maesters. And Sarella evidently has a penchant for, quote, pushing in where she didn't belong. And leaving the most obvious piece of evidence for last, well, Sorella backwards is Larys. So it seems in all likelihood that one of Oberyn Martell's daughters is secretly studying to be a maester at Old Town. Will she survive the Battle of Blood? Will she save Samwell Tarly, or will Sam save her? Does she know about the glass candles, or the faceless men that are infiltrating the Citadel? Who knows? We can only hope to find out when or if The Winds of Winter releases. One of the odder mysterious identities in A Song of Ice and Fire is Cold Hands. He's the undead Night's Watchman who saves Sam and Gilly from a White, and later guides Bran, Hodor, Meera, and Jojen to Bloodraven. The Game of Thrones show reveals that Cold Hands is actually Benjen Stark, Jon Snow's uncle who went missing during arranging. Because of this, some fans believe that in the books, Cold Hands will eventually be revealed as an undead Benjen Stark. But one particularly dedicated fan read through some of the drafts for Dance with Dragons held at the Cushing Library. And there they discovered an interesting editor note, which reads, "Is this Benjen? I think it's Benjen. And does Bran never recognize him because he never sees his face fully?" To this message, G.R. Martin replied, "No." When we look deeper at scenes with or that contain references to Cold Hands, this does make sense. Cold Hands is said to have died long ago. Then there's the fact that Cold Hands seems to know an ancient or at the very least quite uncommon language. Some have theorized that he's speaking the true tongue, which is spoken by the children of the forest, although in Bran 3, Bloodraven says that no human can speak the true tongue. But this is also contradicted in the very same chapter, as we learn from an ancient text that Brandon the Builder, who founded House Stark, could apparently speak fragments of the true tongue. So it's probably possible to learn at least a piece of the true tongue if you're human. Another option for this mysterious language could be the Old Tongue, which is still spoken by giants and some wildlings. So who is Cold Hands then? Who is this long-dead Night's Watchman who speaks mysterious language and works for Bloodraven? Well, some fans have put forward the Night's King. This is a separate character from the Night King from the show, who doesn't exist in the books. The Night's King is a legend about the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who is said to have fell in love with another, and later married her, declaring himself a king with her as his queen. The only issue with this theory is that G.R. Martin has said that the Night's King is unlikely to still be around. This could be explained by Cold Hands being the Night King's son or grandson or something, although G.R. Martin has said that the others are alive, and Cold Hands is clearly said to be dead, so maybe not. Others have put forward that Cold Hands was a member of the Raven's Teeth, Bloodraven's personal guard. We do know that some of the Raven's Teeth took the black when Bloodraven did, around 200 or so, and with men loyal enough to follow Bloodraven to the wall, maybe at least one of them was loyal enough to follow him beyond it. If this theory is true though, we don't know which Raven's Teeth member it would be. Unfortunately, we're never given any names. Fans have also put forward others like Will or Waymore Royce from the prologue, but since Leaf said that Cold Hands died long ago, it doesn't quite work. In the end, Cold Hands doesn't have to be anyone important necessarily. It could honestly be that he's just an old dead crow, that he as an individual has no secret backstory. He was just resurrected because Bloodraven needed someone to do his bidding. Of course, this still leaves the problem of why Cold Hands hides his face, and never gives up anything about himself. It's not as if they don't realize what Cold Hands is. Bran figures out pretty quickly that he's dead. So why hide his face? Is it just that ghastly to look at? Why not have Cold Hands just say that then? Maybe one day we can finally learn the answers to these questions. During Daenerys Targaryen's rule over Meereen, a group of Giscari noblemen lead an underground movement called the Sons of the Harpy. Their goal is to remove Dany from power, and they kill anyone loyal to Daenerys, including Unsullied and freed men. They even kill Shavepates, citizens of Meereen who have allied themselves with Dany. At the center of this operation is a mysterious figure known as the Harpy, and fans have speculated for years on who this might be, with most fans whittling it down to 3 likely options. The first is Hizdahr zo Loraq. Hizdahr is a powerful Giscari noble, and in A Dance with Dragons he marries Daenerys Targaryen.
The prerequisite for that marriage was for Hizdahr to bring 90 days of peace to Meereen.
And sure enough, Hizdahr accomplishes that. The murders actually stop quite abruptly though, almost as if Hizdahr ordered them to. When Hizdahr is arrested by Barristan Selmy, the murders start up once again, and Barristan actually accuses Hizdahr of being the Harpy, which he doesn't confirm or deny. So Hizdahr is one option, albeit a bit obvious. Other fans have put forward the Green Grace. The Green Grace is the high priestess of the Temple of Graces. After Daenerys conquers Meereen, the Green Grace acts as an advisor for her. Some of the wisdom she provides includes asking Dany to reopen the fighting pits, and to marry his daughter. The first piece of evidence that people point to for it being the Green Grace is that of the name the Harpy itself. Harpies are traditionally female, so it would make sense that just like the Harpies of mythology themselves, the Harpy of Meereen is also a woman. The Green Grace is also interested in Marini's tradition, as mentioned a moment ago. She advises Dany to open the fighting pits, to wear traditional Marinese clothing like the tokar, to engage in a traditional fertility ritual, and to marry with a traditional Marinese wedding. One would imagine that someone like the Green Grace, who is so interested in preserving Marinese customs, would be unhappy with being ruled over by a foreign queen like Dany. Some other fans have put forward Reznak Mo Reznak as a candidate. Reznak is an advisor to Dany, but Dany doesn't trust him, and neither does Barristan. There's also the element of Quaith's warning to Dany, which states beware the perfumed seneschal. This could easily apply to Reznak. He is a seneschal and also smells of perfume.
Although some fans think this may be about Varys, which would also make sense. Honestly, it could be both. Regardless though, Reznak remains a suspect. Many fans don't think too highly of the Meereen plot. It meanders and takes up a large portion of A Dance with Dragons, a book already facing pacing problems. The Harpy is a symptom of that. It's a plot that wasn't really needed, but since it exists, it does need to be answered, even if it isn't that important in the grand scheme of the story.
During Theon's A Dance with Dragons chapters, we begin to see the Bolton Northern Alliance fall apart. The Manderleys and the Freys kill each other at dinner, and the air is rife with tension as Stannis' army gets closer and closer. None of this is helped by a strange series of murders taking place at Winterfell that nobody can solve, and the cherry on top of all this, there's a blizzard snowing everybody in. During all this chaos, we get a scene of Theon walking through the Winterfell courtyard, and it's here that he encounters a mysterious hooded man.
Theon's appearance has radically changed over the books, yet the hooded man recognizes him instantly and brands him a kinslayer and a turncloak. So it's likely that the hooded man is pretty familiar with Theon, so who could it be?
Some believe that the hooded man is Hollis Mullen. If you don't remember who that is, and I wouldn't blame you if you've forgotten, Hollis is a member of the Stark household guard who, in A Clash of Kings, was ordered to guard Ned Stark's bones as they're being transported north by the Silent Sisters. He is mentioned in Storm, Feast, and Dance, but he hasn't been seen since Clash. Now in A Dance with the Dragons, Barbary Dustin implies that the bones haven't made it past the neck, meaning Hal is nowhere near Winterfell. Of course, Hal could have snuck by somehow, maybe with help from Helen Reed, and was able to sneak into Winterfell at some point. G.R. Martin has played loose with the timeline before, so this could work. Considering that Hal has been spending all this time guarding Ned's bones, he is presumably still loyal to the Stark cause. And maybe after hearing rumors that Arya, even though she's actually a fake, was being wed to Ramsay, he went to Winterfell. Harwin is another popular option. Harwin was a member of the Stark household guard before joining up with the Brotherhood Without Banners. Now, Harwin hasn't been seen since A Storm of Swords, although he did appear in early drafts for Brienne's chapters in A Feast for Crows, so he does seem to still be around. And should probably have enough time to get to Winterfell between books, so maybe he's the hooded man. Another option is Septon Chael. Chael was the Septon for Winterfell and was thrown down a well in A Clash of Kings by Theon. Since he hasn't appeared since, it's fair to assume that he drowned. But Chael is said to be a strong swimmer and even tells Bran that the gods will take me when they see fit, though I scarcely think it likely that I'll drown. So the question is this just a case of G.R. Martin irony, or is it hinting that Chael may have survived his fall and is able to swim to safety, and ever since has been secretly living at Winterfell? Although Chael wouldn't really be an interesting choice, considering most fans are going to have no idea who he is. Another choice is Robert Glover. Robert was last seen at White Harbor with Lord Manderley, so maybe he went north with him. Although we are led to believe that Robert is staying in White Harbor. But Robert is loyal to the Stark cause and may have headed to Winterfell to assist the Manderleys in overthrowing the Boltons. There's also the possibility that the hooded man is a manifestation of Theon Greyjoy. It's not impossible, but Theon has never exhibited this level of delusion. There's also those mysterious murders. The Spearwives claim they didn't commit all of them, so somebody had to be doing it. and it seems weird to have a mysterious character running about if he isn't in some way implicated in these killings. In A Feast for Crows, Brienne desperately searches for Sansa Stark, and while on that journey, she arrives at the Quiet Isle, a place of peace where men stay silent as they atone for their sins. During this visit, Brienne notices one man who stands out among the rest. He's massive, taller than Brienne, and he's digging a grave. As Brienne passes by, the mysterious man stops his work and pets a dog. Many fans feel that this gravedigger is actually Sandor Clegane. He was last seen in A Storm of Swords, dying from infection and begging Arya to give him the mercy of a quick death, a request she refuses. Surviving an infection with the medicinal technology of Westeros is iffy, but this is a fantasy novel and we don't get an explicit death scene. The gravedigger is wounded, he walks with a limp, he's the right size, and if he was Sandor Clegane, well, having him pet a dog is a nice little tongue-in-cheek reference. Now, the elder brother of the Isle claims that he buried Sandor Clegane, though that grave could easily be a metaphor for the death of the Hound, and the man Sandor still lives. Something that seems to be supported by the elder brother's response to Brienne saying the Hound is dead, to which he says, he's at rest. Lastly, Sandor's horse, Stranger, known for only letting Sandor ride it or lead it, is also at the Quiet Isle. Unless the horse magically changed its personality overnight, Sandor is probably alive to care for it. If this truly is the Hound, this might be where his story ends. After years of suffering, he might have finally found peace. A tranquil island where he can atone for his crimes. In A Clash of Kings, we're introduced to a mysterious, mask-wearing woman named Quaithe. Quaithe warns Dany about those who would seek to control her dragons. Beware. Of whom? Of all. They shall come day and night to see the wonder that has been born again into the world. And when they see, they shall lust. For dragons are fire made flesh, and fire is power. Later in Clash, she also says, to go north, you must journey south. To reach the west, you must go east. To go forward, you must go back. And to touch the light, you must pass beneath the shadow. So who is this mysterious woman? Well, some fans believe that Quaithe is actually Shiera's Seastar. Shiera was a bastard of Aegon IV and was said to be the most beautiful woman in all of Westeros. She took Brynden Rivers, or as most know him, Bloodraven, as her lover. But most interesting of all were the rumors that swirled around her. Shiera and Bloodraven were said to have used sorcery to ferret out secrets, and eventually they used their abilities to create a sort of magical police state. Men, both high and low, began to distrust their neighbor, for fear of them being a spy in Bloodraven's employ. Rumors also existed that Shiera bathed in blood to stay young, a useful tool considering that, like her lover Bloodraven, she would have to be over a century old to still be alive by the time of the books. And curiously enough, we never hear of her death. The last year she's said to be alive is 211 AC, but never once do we hear of her dying. She simply drops off the map. She disappears, just like Bloodraven when he vanished during a ranging beyond the wall in 252 AC. G.R. Martin has also said that Shiera Seastar spoke a dozen languages, something pretty useful for someone looking to leave Westeros and live abroad. Of course, Quaithe could also just be Quaithe. A Song of Ice and Fire fans like to create secret identity theories, understandable considering the last book came out in 2011, and this may be a case of that. There may be no deeper secret to Quaithe's identity. She may just be someone able to perform magic, who for some reason or other took an interest in Dany. Is that as interesting as her being Shiera Seastar? No, it's not. We can only hope that the Winds of Winter provides us with the clarification we want on these various identities. That's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed this sort of haphazard, slap-together thing you're watching, then I'll ask you give it a like, I guess. There's memberships enabled. You get absolutely nothing for it, so if you want to throw away your money for no real benefit, well, I won't stop you. Anyway, that's it. Goodbye.